All right, today we are going to discuss how the interquartile range is used to make comparisons among distributions. So we're going to start by looking at sugar content within cereal, okay, and shelf location. So essentially what we're doing is using the IQR to describe the variability of different sets of information. So let's take a look at our overall size of our distribution. So what it says here is cereal boxes have nutritional information on the side panel. Sugar content is reported in grams per serving. So here's some information about that. Take a moment to look at it. Okay. Now, the dot plot below shows the distribution of grams of sugar per serving for 70 cereals. The median is 7.5 grams, or about 2 teaspoons of sugar per serving. The red marker, that little upside down T in red, indicates the median. Okay. So this would be the halfway point right here. Okay. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to go on and take a look at question A real quick. Okay, and question A says that we are going to use the dot plot from the previous page showing the distribution of the sugar in cereals. Are there intervals where the data cluster? What does this tell you about that information? All right, so here is a copy of the dot plot. Okay, and the first question was if they clustered. So what we're looking for here is a group of information where they are grouped together. And we have a cluster, what I would call a cluster, a big cluster at 3, but it's an interval cluster from 0 to 3. So this is a group. Okay, then we have this gap here at 4. So this would be a gap in our information. And then we've got another grouped cluster that goes from 5 to 15. Now, within each gap, we have within each cluster, we have smaller clusters. Like, for instance, we could actually say that this group right here, this group of 3, is a cluster, while this group from 5 to 6 would be a cluster. Maybe this group from 8 to 12, okay, would be a cluster, where these lower groups really aren't, there's not a lot of them, but there seems to be a lot of information. But we have 2 main clusters of information with a gap at 4. So what this tells me is that there's no cereal that has 4 grams of sugar. All right, so let's move on to the next question. All right, A2 says that the table below shows some of the data. On a copy of the dot plot from the previous page, locate each data point. So what we're going to do here is it's going to take this sugar and its location. So Brandful has 5 grams of sugar. It's on the bottom shelf. Okay, we notice that the bottom also has a 3. Okay, and then these top cereals, okay, you've got a 6 and a 1, an 11, and a 10. So let's real quick sort these out. So bottom shelf cereals, okay, we've got a 5, and let's see, bottom, 3. Okay, we have a 5 and a 3. For middle shelf cereals, we have 13, 7, and 6, and 14. And then for top shelf cereals, there was 6, a 1, and 6, 1, 11, and 10. 10's down here. All right, so real quickly looking at these numbers, I can tell that even though there seems to be less sugar and maybe 1 or 2, that the bottom shelf cereals would have the least amount of sugar in them, while the middle and top shelf probably have the most, probably with the middle being in the most. We could actually throw in and find the mean or the average number of sugar grams per cereal for the bottom, middle, and top shelf cereals, and then that would give us a indication of where the most sugary cereals are. But let's go ahead and finish answering the question where it says to locate the different numbers. Okay, so I'm going to use black for the bottom shelf, red for the middle, and green for the top. So here we go. Let's see here. Bottom, we had a 5 and a 3. So 5 and a 3. Okay, so I'm just going to say those 2 dots are those 2 numbers. I'm going to go over here to my green pen, and let's do the top. We have a 6, a 1, an 11, and a 10. So we have a 6, a 1, an 11, and a 10. Okay, and now red for the middle shelf. We had a 13, a 7, a 6, and a 14. Okay, and what this really can tell me is that by looking at the location, see how the bottom shelf cereals both are on the lower end of things. The middle shelf cereals are we've got a couple small ones with a couple of the taller ones, or higher ones, and then we have the top, it's got a low, a middle, and a high sugar content. What this tells me is that our information is probably going to be pretty spread as far as, oh, there's the bell, as far as the information per shelf. However, we could make some assumptions based on what we're seeing here. We can say that the bottom shelf cereals are typically not very sugary. We could probably say that the top shelf are slightly more sugary than the middle, but the middle shelf would probably contain the most amount of sugary cereals. Now let's think about this. Why do you think that they would put the sugary cereals in the middle? Well, that could be because that is oftentimes about eye level, and often those are things like, you know, your Frosted Flakes and your Lucky Charms, those that are considered kid cereals. They want the kids in the cart to see them. It comes into a whole bunch of marketing ideas, but we're really not going to get into that. We're really simply going to look at this. So let's move on. Let's move on to B. For B, and what I want you to do before coming to class is to answer B2 and B2A, or sorry, B2A and B2B before coming to class. So what that is finding the IQR for both the top, the middle, and the bottom shelf cereals. Okay, and then these dot plots are separated by the shelf where they came from. Okay, so what they did is they took that dot plot from A and they kind of divided it up by the number of cereals per shelf. All right, so before coming to class, it is very, very important that you have found both the upper, lower quartiles, the median, and the interquartile range, or IQR, for all three shelves. Okay, and then we will pick up with B3 in class. We'll check this over, we'll come up with a list, and then we will be talking about why they may be there and what this actually tells me about the variability of the information by shelf. All right, see you in class.